So those who don't know about me, I'll just start with a quick introduction. So my name is Pragati Jain. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. I'm also one of the super user at Microsoft Power BI community. So if you guys don't know about Power BI community, so Microsoft Power BI community is a great forum for learning Power BI, and that's the forum I have learned a lot from. So I would really, ask people to go and join Microsoft Power BI community forum because it's a very good platform. You'll see all the, amazing people who have like amazing knowledge from around the world, and they just share the different answers, different kind of way a problem can be approached. So yeah, just go and join this community because I'm 110% sure you guys will definitely learn and come back with something good from this community. Then I've got nearly 10 plus years of industry experience, and currently I'm working as a senior consultant at Avanade here in London. The other thing about me is like I'm also an organizer at Data Weekender conference. We had a conference this year on 14th May, and we are looking forward to coming up with the next one soon. Apart from that, I'm also a manager at Microsoft Power BI UK user group. So this is the user group where we just welcome new speakers, established speakers to share their knowledge with us. So if any of you guys, if you are a new speaker or if you're an established one, doesn't matter. But if you want to share some knowledge with the community, do find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, then we can arrange a session of yours there. Then one fun fact about me is I'm a painter, and I just like to proudly call myself a techie artist. And yeah, I've got my links here. Like if you want to connect with me on social networking websites, then you can definitely drop me a message on LinkedIn or send me a friend request. You can connect with me on Twitter. I'm also in Power BI community. I've got my blog and I've got my YouTube channel as well. Now that's a quick introduction, but let's talk about for what we are here today, right? So today I'll be talking more around how you can use Azure Databricks with Power BI to create a complete scenario or a complete solution where you're doing a lot of cleaning and blending and transforming in Azure Databricks by using and leveraging its benefit, and then trying to bring your output and doing some kind of visualizations in Power BI to generate your key insights. But before that, let's just talk about what is Azure Databricks. If I talk about, if I just try to explain that like in a very basic terms, so Azure Databricks is kind of a data analytics platform, which helps you in integrating together the online cloud Microsoft Azure services, basically. So for example, if you see this simple architecture, so I just got it from the Microsoft documentation. So in this, you can clearly see like Azure Databricks is kind of a platform here, which can actually ingest data from different kind of data warehouses, like for example, Azure SQL data warehouses, data lake storage, Azure Blob storage, Hadoop, and so on. And then you can also see it also serves as a platform which can interact with people, which can be, accessed by people from different fields as well, like whether people are coming from data science field, from data engineering field, analysts like us, or from a business side as well. And also Azure Databricks can be easily linked to different kind of applications. Now, when I talk about applications, it could be deep learning ML kind of applications, or with the streaming applications, data warehousing, or Power BI, about which we are going to talk today. I don't want to really go into deep because I really want to keep it as a very, beginner session where I just want to show how you can really leverage the benefit of Azure Databricks for doing all the kind of heavy lifting and analysis at that side and bring that output to Power BI and then generate some kind of cool insights. So before we start with that, there are few prerequisites for this. Now Azure licensing. Let's talk about Azure licensing. Now, when we talk about Azure licensing, when you register for the first time on portal.azure.com, it kind of gives you a free license with, with certain credits. If I remember, it is $200 credits or $300 credits. But to use some features within Azure, you need to pay for it. So not every feature within Azure portal is free to use. So you need to pay for certain features, and Azure Databricks is one of those features which is not included in Azure trial license. You'll have to particularly buy that license or to use that Azure Databricks feature. So Azure is kind of very good at, it kind of provides you a pay as you go license as well, right? So it's more like you just pay for how much you use, right? You're not like paying for the whole year, and rather than not using it, you just pay for like maybe say for next 3 months because you're working on Azure Databricks, and just pay for next 3 months and that's it. So for this, you really need a license, and you can easily go and get the pay-as-you-go license for Azure. Then the second thing about this is obviously when we talk about Azure Databricks, you need to have some kind of basic knowledge around Spark. Now Spark is again, platform where you can actually bring a lot of big data and try to process it right. And Spark, and the good thing about Spark is like it kind of supports not only one language, it supports so many different languages which you can use for using your, I mean, you can write code in different kind of languages. Like for example, if you come from a SQL background, then yeah, Spark provides something like Spark SQL to write your code, right? And suppose if you come from a, say, data engineering background and you're so good at Python, then Spark gives you something like PySpark in which you can code. And when I say PySpark and Python, SQL and Spark SQL, I mean their syntax is very much similar. So if you have got a particular background, it's kind of very easy to start with, Databricks, and you can start just writing code with just few tweaks in it. And then the third thing is obviously a basic knowledge around how do you consume data in Power BI. And obviously, if people are coming from Power BI background, they know that there are different kind of connectors available in Power BI to connect to different kinds of Azure environments as well. So now let's first talk about. Let me just tell you one more thing before we start. Now, maybe if some people are not, if some of you guys are not interested, in buying a pay-as-you-go license, like for example, if some of you are just looking to brush your knowledge and, get your hands on Azure Databricks by using, say, PySpark, then there is another way you can actually use a free service to just, get your hands-on experience. And that is what Databricks Community Edition is. I can show this to you. So what this Databricks Community Edition is, it kind of is an environment where I think you guys can see it. So I just clicked on that link and it took me to community.cloud.databricks.com. Now, this is kind of an environment which is, freely given by Databricks. And what you can go here is you can basically create your own notebooks. We'll go through it, how to do these things, but I'm just showing you how you can use this free platform to, increase your or get benefit of that hands-on experience. So what you can clearly do here is you can kind of just create your different notebooks here and try to practice, say, your PySpark skills. So for example, you can see like I wrote this notebook some time back and I was just trying to understand and practice PySpark. So you can just use it for free. You don't need to really pay for it. So this is kind of a really good thing where you can get started rather than paying for Azure Databricks. And if you really want to get your hands on with some of these coding languages like PySpark, Spark SQL, or Spark R, then this is the best platform you can start with. So you don't need to pay for anything, just get started with it. So I just wanted to show it to you, like there is a way where you can practice your hands-on skills on these coding languages. Okay, so let's now start with Azure Databricks. So I'll just switch my screen. And I think that's the other one. Sorry. Okay, so when you go to portal.azure.com, this is something where you land in, okay? And obviously I've got licensing going on, so that's why I can see everything. So this is what portal.azure.com is. And once you have got your pay-as-you-go licensing, then the first thing that you need to do is to use Azure Databricks capabilities. The first thing you need to do is you need to create a resource. Now, I have already created that, but I'll just quickly show it to you how you can do that. So once you hit create a resource, simply just type Azure Databricks. So what we are just trying to do currently is I'm just trying to lay a foundation how you can start with it and then show you some few things in PySpark, and then we'll jump to Power BI. So this is what Azure Databricks resource is. And obviously why you need a resource. The reason is to use Azure Databricks capability, you need to have that environment set up for you within Azure Cloud. So that's what this resource is going to do for you. So once we hit create, it will kind of ask you different things like you need to create your sponsorships. You can create resource group name. For example, I can just create a test resource for now, test resource group, and say Azure. And if I hit OK, it takes that. It kind of just checks whether that name is available. And then you can give a particular workspace name. Now, workspace is again that part of the environment of the Azure Databricks that you will be using to run your queries and everything. So again, you can give a name to this like test workspace and Azure. OK. And once you have done that, leave other things because it is by default, selected for you. You can click on review and create. And what this review and create does, it kinds of validates the resource group name, workspace name, and all the different kind of options that you've selected. And once your validation succeeds, you just hit create. Now, I'm not hitting create because it kind of takes few minutes, when you're trying to create a resource and workspace for Azure Databricks. So what I'll do, I'll just go back to my home and I'll use the one that I've already created. Now, once you create your Azure Databricks workspace and resource group, you see Azure Databricks resource group is created. Along with that, a workspace is created. Now, once you click on that workspace, it takes you to a new window. And it kind of asks you to launch workspace. So once you launch workspace, you are directed and it will just ask you like your login credentials. That's fine. You can just select the email address, what you have used. And once you do that, it kind of brings you to this area, which is Azure Databricks area. Now, if you guys have seen before, this area is very much similar to the Databricks Community Edition area, right? Because obviously this is Azure Databricks, so it's exactly similar to that. So if you want to start practicing on Databricks Community Edition portal for free, then it is similar to this, so you don't find any differences between them. Now, just a quick thing here. Now, here you can see your workspace information. So like you can see what all workspaces you have got. So like by default, Azure just creates a shared and users one. Now, for example, if I go to the users one, I can see my 2 users created there. And if I go further there, I can see if I've got any notebooks already created. OK, but before doing anything, before running any query, now, obviously, when you want to create a notebook and you want to execute a code, you need what should I say? You need something that helps you execute that code, right? So here, that thing which you need to, calculate, do all the calculations or, do all kind of computes, there's something called clusters. Now, to talk about clusters, go to this compute area. Now, in this compute area, whenever you are there for the first time, there is no cluster for you created. I've already created that because I was using it a few minutes back before this session started. But what you can do is if you're doing it for the first time, you can create a cluster. Let's see if we hit create cluster. It asks you a few things like, for example, your cluster name. So like, for example, Databricks cluster. And then don't worry about any other things because these are the standard options that have been selected for the basic work that you really need to do. And once you hit that, you can create cluster. And once you create cluster, what Azure Databricks is doing for you, it's kind of creating the cluster and trying to, bring that cluster up. So whatever queries you submit in your notebooks that are being, handled by this cluster, all the execution is handled by this cluster in the simple terms. So this is how you create a cluster. And once that cluster is created, you actually have created all the foundation you need to start working with Azure Databricks Notebook. You have got your resource group, you have got your workspace, which is the basic environment you need to use Azure Databricks capability. And the third and most important thing is a cluster, which will help you execute all the queries in your notebook. So that's what we have created. And what I'll do is I'll go to clusters because when you create it for the first time, it takes like few minutes for initiating and getting that up and running. So what I'll do is I'll go to the existing clusters that I created, and I've got this my cluster here, so I'll be using that. Now, how you start with creating a notebook. Now, very simple. Here you can clearly see there's something like plus sign. If you hit a plus sign, you can create so many things there. obviously, I'm not talking about other things like job, pipeline, or repo. Clusters we have seen. We are not creating a table right now. We are just creating a notebook. So if I hit notebook, it asks me to write a name. Okay, so let's write maybe session notebook and see. Now, whenever you try to create a notebook in Azure Databricks, it kind of asks you what default language you would like to use. Now, if I just expand that drop down, I can see Python, Scala, SQL, and R. So for example, if you're coming from a database background, just select SQL and start writing those SQL queries in these notebooks with just, few tweaks, I would say. And if you're coming from like a data science background, many people still use R. I know who are from the data science background. You can start using R. And if you're expert with Scala, go on and use Scala. And if you're good with Python, then go and use Python. I would use Python for now. So I'll select Python. And now the third thing you choose here is the cluster. So which cluster you really want to, connect to your notebook. So in my case, I'll use my cluster because the cluster, what we just created, it's still taking time to, get up and running. So I'll use the existing my cluster, which I created. And what I'll do is I'll just hit create. Now, once I hit create, I can see a blank notebook has already, appeared for me here. Now here, basically, you can start writing things like in PySpark code. Like if you're good with PySpark, then it should be very easy for you to get starting. In the end, I'll also share with you guys, some resources if you really want to start your journey. But let's do a few things. So the first thing what we'll do is let's, try to get some data in this notebook so we can start with some kind of analysis. Now, the first thing I really want to show it to you is, let me just copy paste one command. So in Azure, one good thing is like Microsoft has already got, some default data sets available for you within this environment, which you can, actually start looking at. OK, so for example, I can show it to you what all data sets you can look at. So for example, if I just go here, this is my query basically. And what I'm doing is I'm just trying to display all the available data sets within a particular repository, Databricks dataset repository. And here on the right, there's something called run. So if you click on it, there's something like run cell, run all above, or run all below. We'll talk about run all above and run all below when we have more, cells here, but this is just one cell. So I'll just run this cell. Now, once I run this cell, also before executing any, command within your Databricks notebook, make sure this is turned green. If it is not green, it means your cluster is not attached. It's detached. OK, it is attached. That's why it's showing me green. OK, now once I ran this, query, then I can see there are so many data sets available here. Like I can see Azure Databricks has given some data sets related to COVID. Then there is some data set related to airlines. Then you can see Amazon, bike sharing, credit card fraud, and so on. And even there are some data sets related to data.gov. So you can actually go and, just look at the data set that you're really interested in. But what I'm doing is I just picked up a very simple data set. I mean, obviously, it's not simple, but I'm just picking a small element of that data set to simplify the process. So what I chose was I have just chosen the New York green taxi data set. And what I'll do is I'll just enter that path again, which I have actually written here. And what I'm doing is I'm just extracting a New York taxi trip data for the green taxis, basically, not the yellow taxis as usual. And this is the data I'm trying to read. So if I just run that, it will kind of show me all the folders related to this data. So I can see. So this taxi data is quite big. I mean, it's quite huge. You can see multiple files for a single year, basically, for every month. And I think this data goes till 2019. So from 2013 to 2019, there is a lot of big data. But to ease the process, I've just taken a single year data for now so that, we can see the actual process, because the motive of this session is more around linking that Azure Databricks environment with your analysis to Power BI and generate some insights, right? So we'll be focusing more on that side. So this is what I've just got here. And what I'll do is, suppose if I don't want to write everything in my single cell, right? Because sometimes things can get messy, right? So it's always good to, make your code easy to understand. So what you can do is you can basically add another cell. So there's something like option here. So it kind of gives you two options, either add cell above or add cell below. So I'll add just cell below. And now what I'll do is I'll just read the data. So this is the year I'm reading the data, and this is a very simple query for if any of you is coming from Python background, then I'm just reading this data because I've already read it here, and I'm just using it from this link here. And what I'll do is I'll just run the cell, and once I run the cell, in this variable, this data is actually read. Okay. Now the next thing is okay, one more thing before I go to the next step. Whoever is coming from maybe R or Python background, they may know basic foundation, like in Python or R the data is taken as a data frame. So data frame is more like your Excel file where you have got column and row structure going on. So that structure kind of structuring is called data frames in Python. So when I have read this data, now what I really want to do is I want to create a data frame, because once you create a data frame in Python, it's kind of easy to use that output or use that data to do the further analysis. So what I really did was I loaded the data in my data variable, and next what I'm doing is I'm creating a data frame named taxi.data. And what I'm doing is I'm just using a command spark.read.format, because all these files were CSV files, right? So I'm just trying to read a CSV format with some header too, because I want my headers to be included in that data frame. If you don't want headers, you can give this as false, but I really want my headers because headers will serve as column names for your data frame basically. And I also and I want to load it from this data. So that's what I'm simply doing. And if I just execute this, then this taxi data will create a data frame. Just give it a minute because it's a year worth of data. So it may just take some time. And you can still see your progress here. So whenever you run, so these are called small jobs. So whenever you run a job, you can see its progress here, like how much time it is taking to run. But once the data is loaded in that data frame, it's pretty quick. And once that is executed, you can see in the output below that cell that a taxi data, and against that you can clearly see it is PySpark SQL data frame dot data frame. So it's a data frame kind of object now. And if I further expand that, I can see all the columns in my taxi data in the taxi data frame. So you basically end up having a Excel kind of structure here with columns and rows, and we can further view it. So let's just create another cell. And I just like to create different cells because it kind of just keep things different and clean as well, like what I'm doing here. So now the display function will just display, I think it just displays the top 1,000 rows. So when I display on taxi data, so obviously taxi data was the data frame that we created, and we are just trying to display the rows from that data frame. So if you click, if you just see here, you can see all the columns are here. And you can scroll and see all the top 1,000 rows. So you can see the kind of columns you have got, the kind of data you have got in them, the date time columns going on. And yeah, you can see the location, latitude and longitudes here. Passenger counts, so like how many passengers they have, done the trip against. Then the trip distance is there, fare amount is there, how much extra did they earn, and tip amount is there. And yeah, those kind of other, features or information going on in that data frame. Now once we have this data frame, let's just try to see a few things. Like for example, if I just want to do a bit now whenever as an analyst, when you have some data in front of you, I'm sure many of you have a way of starting with your analysis, but do write them in the chat what you really start with when you see a data in front of you. What kind of first thing that you see about the data? I think for me, from my point of view, the first thing what I see is just see the kind of different columns and the data that's going on in the data that I have been given. And the second thing what I do is I literally do a count on the data, like what's the volume of my data here? That's the other thing I do. So what I'll do is I'll just add another cell. And what we'll do is we'll just count the number of rows, okay, in this data. This data is not that big, but yeah, it's just kind of approach I'm trying to show, like what kind of analysis we can do. So we can see like how many rows are there here, right? So that's the first thing I do. And yeah, do type in chat, guys, what is your analysis strategy when you see first time some data as a raw data in front of you? What do you guys really do about it, right? Because it's kind of good because I may just learn something with you guys. Okay, so now the next thing. Now, when I showed you a data frame here at the top, I mean, let's just call it data or data frame. So we can see all the columns going on here. Now, the one column which I had here was payment type. Now, payment type, I can see like the payment type is a numeric value, right? It has got like 1, 2, 3 values in it. Now this actually doesn't make sense to me. I mean, just think from the point of view, suppose if you want to do some kind of taxi data, trip data analysis based on the payment type, how would you, talk to the users what this payment type is actually, right? What this one denotes, what this two denote, right? So let's kind of try to do some kind of modifications here or transformations here. For that, what I'll do, I'll again create another cell. Oh, sorry, I want to create a cell below this. I'll create a cell below this. And what I'll do is, what I'm literally trying to do here is just trying to see distinct values in payment type. I mean, I already know it has got some numeric values, but obviously these are the top 1,000 rows displayed. So I don't have visibility of my whole data. So it's good to do a distinct count on this column and see like how many distinct values do I have here. So let's just run this. And this is what this is doing is, we are selecting payment type column from my taxi data frame. And on that select statement, I'm just trying to do a distinct, and I'm trying to just show the distinct values. That's what I'm doing here. Okay, and just running the cell. Obviously, it's not a PySpark session, guys, so I'm not going into detail, but just telling you the basics. So now when I did a distinct show on the payment type column, I see it has got 4 different values, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now these 1, 2, 3, and 4 doesn't make any sense to me, right? So what I literally did was I actually went to, now, as I said, this is the data set given by, Microsoft themselves, right? It's a freely available data set. So I just went back and checked the definition of these data sets. So what I literally did was, I can show you one thing. So this is the link where you actually have got descriptions around all the Azure open data sets. You can go and pick anything there. Now, I was looking at US taxi data, right? So what I did was I literally went and checked about the taxi data. I think it was somewhere here. So let's go and check this one. And here what they have given is, they have kind of given the definition of the columns that you see in the data. Like, for example, we are looking at payment type, right? And it kind of tells you like what that 1 denotes, what that 2 denotes, what is 3 and what is 4 and 5 and 6 and so on, right? So it kind of tells you a definition. So let's create this definition in our data frame so we can further use it for our analysis in Power BI. Because as I said, 1, 2, 3, 4 won't make any sense to the users, but credit card payment type, cash payment type, no charge, or voided trip payment, I mean, these kind of payment types will make sense to the user when we start analyzing them. So let's do one thing. Let's try to, modify this. Now, I won't be writing this one whole chunk of PySpark code to modify this. I'll just show you quickly. So I'll just add another cell. Oh, I again added it on the wrong side. Sorry, that's me. I do that all the time. Sorry. So what I'm doing here is, I'm just kind of, trying to replace these 1, 2, 3, 4 values in my payment type column with the sensible definitions that I have got from, Microsoft Azure dataset definitions. And what it's, and obviously in PySpark, when you want to use different kind of functions, you need to import some packages. So that's what I've done here at the starting. I can actually share this notebook with you guys as well in the end, if you want to, play around with it and do analysis at your end. So what I'm literally doing is, I'm just replacing those values. So when it is 1, give it credit card. When it is 2, give it cash, and so on. And what we do is we just run it. Okay, now once we run it, it has already executed. Okay, now let's just see what values we end up in taxi in the payment type column. So what I'll again do is, again add cell below. That's the right one this time. And again the same query. It's the same query that we ran above, right? It's the same query. We're trying to display the distinct values from a payment type column, right? So what I'll do is I'll just run it. Okay, it's running. And bingo, we have got the values that we replace. I mean, we have got the change values, basically modified values. So now this kind of looks like a proper, categorization for payment type rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going on, right? So yeah, first step done. I think we have got there. Now, similarly, what I'll do is I'll just quickly, do the similar kind of thing for another column in the data, which is called vendor ID. So what I'll do is I'll add cell below. Again, the first thing is let's just check what all distinct values are in this vendor ID column. Run the cell. We can see it's a numeric value again. So we have got 1 and 2, and let's just replace it with sensible categorization. And again, this is done using Microsoft documentation. So add cell below. And again, what I did was use the same kind of functions to replace the values. So like one with Creative Mobile Technologies and other one with Verifone Inc. So I'll just run that again. And then we check this again just to make sure our modifications or our transformations have gone through correctly. Do that every time, guys, because things can go wrong. So again, we are trying to see the distinct values in vendor ID column. And we can clearly see, yeah, our transformation has gone through. Okay, now let's just stop with true transformations, right? Because we need to see a few more things here. Okay, so that's fine. We have got that. Now let's try to do something, okay, some kind of like analysis, okay? Now, suppose if I want to see, total number of passengers with different kind of payment, okay, or different payment type, then how do I do that, right? So what we can do is, this is the query, and what it's doing is just grouping the total number of passengers by payment type. I mean, if you come from SQL background, you'll understand grouping and summing, right? So it's the same kind of thing, just written in a different way in PySpark. So what I'll do is I'll just run, because let's just see how many, passengers we have against different payment types. So this kind of gives us a payment, total number of passengers who have used different kinds of payment types, okay, while doing the trips with these New York green taxis. Now one good thing what I really like about Azure Databricks is, obviously you ran a query, it executed and gave you an output in the form of the table. But there's something more you can see here. Now that something more is, if you see here below, there's an icon, okay? So this is the table icon, display as raw table, and this is display as a chart. I mean, it's by default selected as bar chart, but it has got other options. So currently we are seeing it in a table form. But what if I want to see it as a bar chart? Now, if I click on bar chart, suddenly that data looks more promising to me. So because I'm used to seeing charts a lot. So that simple table just doesn't work for me. And the moment I see, visualization, it kind of makes me more happy, because I can at least see some kind of things happening there. Okay, there were more people who paid by cash rather than using credit card. Okay, so those kind of things. So that's really good about it. And even, you can just go and check these things. Like, for example, if you go under plot options, you can change things as well. You can change the aggregation. Like if you don't want sum, you want average, then you can change it. If you want count, you can do that. And even you can change the display type. Like in bar chart, if you want stacked or 100% stacked, obviously in this case, 100% stacked doesn't seem that good. So I'll keep it to the same. And yeah, you can change the different kind of charts, like line chart, obviously not many categories, so it doesn't work. And obviously line chart works more with the trends over time, right? So we'll stick to bar chart, but just showing you like you can display the data in different, ways. And let's just apply. So we've got that chart there. Let's do a similar thing with another query. Okay, so here what we did was we just grouped our passenger count with the different payment type. Okay, let's do another query. Let's just, summarize the trip amount by vendor ID. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll just run that again. It will display the data in the form of a table by default, but I can go back and change it to, say, suppose if I want to look at a pie, then it kind of, shows me that distribution, like 21% with this vendor and, the remaining 79% with this vendor. So just showing you like you can actually display your data in different ways while you're working with your analysis within Azure Databricks. And also, guys, I mean, there's a very big, wrong basically, thought about like Azure Databricks is only for data engineers or data scientists. No, it's not, guys. It's for analysts like us as well, because I mean, if you're coming from an analyst background, it's very easy for you to start with Azure Databricks, because I know, like, obviously I work with Power BI a lot, and doing sometimes challenging transformations when there is a challenging data, you really can't do everything in Power BI. So you really need a different environment where you can do all the heavy lifting, and then bring that, transform data to Power BI, because it just makes life easier in Power BI. Basically, just create your data model and then just do it and use it for reporting. So obviously, it's always good to have something like this hands-on with, because this just makes your life easier. So yeah, I mean, if you still think it's for data scientists and engineers, no, it's not, guys. We can definitely use it. So yeah, so what I did was I literally tried to do this. And what I'll do is, another thing what we can do is, like, suppose if I want to, now what I'm doing is I'm just trying to display the schema of mine. So what I'm doing basically here is, I had so many columns in this data, right? If we saw above where we had the whole data frame displayed, we had so many things here, right? We can use these things for analysis, right? But what I'm doing is I'm just picking or selecting few columns from this data frame, and I will write that out as an output within Azure Databricks, which I can further use in Power BI to do some analysis. So what I'm doing is, in this cell below, I'm just selecting these few columns from this data frame and just, trying to create another data frame. I mean, I'm just giving it same name, but yeah, you can give a different name as well. Okay, so that's what we have got there. And now what I'll do is, now, obviously, once you have got output, you have transformed things, you have, modified your columns. You can even add columns, which I haven't shown you, but yeah, you can transform your data and then, write it out as an output. Now, once you have something ready here in, Azure Databricks, you need to write it out to a certain location. So, you can connect to that location from Power BI and bring your, analysis-based transform data here. So one thing what you need to do as a last step, always when you have finished with your analysis in Azure Databricks, is write out your data. And I'll just rename it, because this name is always, is already, saved as a new as a table there. So what this does is it kind of writes out your output as a table in Hive Store, and from where you can, connect and use it in Power BI. So what I'll do is I'll just run it. And once I run it, let's give it a few seconds. Will kind of take a few more seconds. Okay, so it's kind of just, updating and writing and computing few things. And once that table is written, you can actually check it where it is written, okay? Okay, so it's written, your command finished, okay? So on the left tab, there's something called data. If you click there, you can see the new data that we wrote, New York, I mean, NYC taxi green new, it's written there. So if it's there, it means it's written correctly. Now, other thing what I just forgot to tell you guys is, like, while you are doing your analysis, obviously you can display your, queries data in form of different visualization. One more thing what you can do here is, under view, there's something like a dashboard, okay? If you click on a new dashboard, whatever queries you have run, the output of that is shown here in a dashboard. Like, for example, this was something we were looking at the path, like, I really don't want it, okay? So what I'll do is, so you can basically create a dashboard here. And yeah, I mean, you have basically got everything in here as a dashboard, and you can just create it. Now, the only challenge with Azure Databricks, I mean, where it is missing is, like, how do you share this dashboard to a larger audience? Like, if you can prepare something here, then why do you need other tools like Power BI or Tableau, or other tools like ClickView and so many there in the market? Now, the only thing what I find challenging here with Azure Databricks is, once I do my analysis, I can create this dashboard, that's fine, but how do I share it with a larger audience? How do these people consume this dashboard, what I've created? So for that, we really need tool like Power BI, where we can connect this output to, and then, generate similar kind of analysis in that tool. And also, like, there is a limitation, right? So for example, if I go back to the notebook, go to your workspace, go to session notebook again, that's fine. So we came to the notebook and there were like limitations on the charts, right? Like, for example, you can just use few charts and also there are no filters or slicers, like, so there are things missing, but these kind of charts are really helpful for the root level analysis that you're trying to do. So that's why I find it really helpful. But how can Azure Databricks be used with Power BI? Now that's something we will see. Okay, so now we have written our data here. Now next is, let's open Power BI. I think I did open a window. Yeah, oh, sorry about that. Okay, so I've opened the empty Power BI window. Okay, now how do you connect Power BI? Now we have got our output stored in Azure Databricks. Now the only thing is remaining is bring that output or bring that table written in Azure Databricks environment to your Power BI so you can further create some analysis or insights or visualizations, or try to generate that story in Power BI. Okay, I'm on time. Okay, so this will not take much time because we have already seen the bigger picture. So what I'll do is in Power BI, I go to get data. Obviously not telling you these basics because I'm assuming everyone knows about these things. In Azure, if you go to the get data side in Azure, there's something called Azure Databricks. Click on Azure Databricks, hit connect. Now there is few information, or there are few information items that you need to connect Power BI to Azure Databricks. But don't worry because everything is there in Azure Databricks notebook. So let's go back to our area. This is where we had a notebook, right? Now if you go to Power BI, it's kind of asking you a server host name, HTTP path. Okay, now let's see from where we get these. Okay, so in settings, oh, sorry, not in settings. If you go to compute where you created your cluster. Okay, so I'm using this cluster, so I'll go to this. There's something called advanced options. If you expand that and go to JDBC ODBC option, you have got all the details. You just need to copy paste this. So in Power BI, we need a server host name. So we'll copy a server host name here and paste it here. Then it needs a HTTP path. So yeah, there's a HTTP path again for us. Just copy it and paste it here. And now I'm bringing my data in direct query mode because what is the use of Azure Databricks? Basically do all your calculated columns and transformations there and then bring the data here. So it's okay, you can bring that in direct query as well. So for now I'll just connect to direct query, but yeah, if you want to use import mode, you can use import mode as well. But let's just go to direct query, and if I hit OK, now what it will ask me, it will ask me an additional information. Now, once this new window appears, there are 3 different ways you can connect to Azure Databricks. One is username password. One is Azure Active Directory. One is personal access token. Let's look at personal access token now. Now, this is like an access token that you need to generate from the Azure Databricks and use it here in Power BI. Now, how do we generate that is go back to the notebook. In Azure Databricks, sorry. And under settings, there's something called user settings. Go to user settings and you can just click on generate new token. You can give it a name like test PBI token. Give it anything and just hit generate. It kind of generates a token. Just copy that and use it in Power BI and hit connect. Now once this token gets accepted, you'll be able to see all the data within Azure Databricks. Okay. Now, when I say all the data, there is a lot to it. So once you do that, you can see something in samples. Okay. Now these are the samples that Azure has already provided to you. So you can actually go and load these things if you want. Okay. But let's go to the table that we have created, right? So that will be under Hive Metastore. So you can see, we can see New York taxi green new data here. Click that, previews evaluating. Let's evaluate that. And once it's there, load. So that's how you have connected Power BI to the, analyzed data set or data frame or table, whatever naming convention you want to use, which is in Azure Databricks. So this was like a very small example, but you can actually do a lot of heavy transformations in Azure Databricks and then just bring the main data, transform data to Power BI to create your story further. So once this data is loaded, okay, let's give it a time. Okay, so that data is loaded. right? Now you can now you can simply start, bringing this data to life. Like, for example, you want, oh, sorry, payment type, and suppose I want fair amount. Okay, so you can see like that chart will get generated. Obviously, it's direct query, so there could be some performance challenges to it. But yeah, that's how you can, use the transform data from Azure Databricks in Power BI and, kind of try to create your visualizations here. And I'm not doing a visualization session here. So what I'll do is I'll just show you a quick report that I generated. Where's that gone? Sorry. Yeah. So what I did was I bought this data in Power BI. Let me just give the credentials, guys. Sorry. 1 second. Give me a few seconds. I just need to validate my credentials. Okay. Back to the report. And yeah, so yeah, sorry, I was just validating my credentials because I just published this report in my workspace here. So you can see this is the report. It's a simple report I just created because obviously it's not about creating report, right? We are just looking at how we can use Azure Databricks and Power BI together. So it's like a very basic report. I just got some high level figures here, like total trips that I have seen in 2013, because if you remember, I've just loaded the data for 2013, though there is data since 2019. So you can load the whole data and try to create something if you want. And then what I did was I'm actually using the new field parameters here, guys. So for example, this chart gets sliced and diced by using these two different slices going on, which is used using field parameters. So for example, currently I'm seeing total amount charged by different kind of payment types. Suppose if I want to see total trips by payment type, then this chart will show me total trips by payment type. Similarly, trip distance in miles, then it will show me by payment type. Similarly, if I want to slice by vendor, then I can see by vendor the trip distance in miles, and similarly number of trips in miles. So that's like a quick thing that I just tried to reproduce here. And yeah, the other thing what I want to tell you, this was basically the thing I really wanted to show you guys, like, how you can really use, Azure Databricks and Power BI together to, just make them work together, because sometimes you just can't use Power BI to do all the transformations, right? I know many of you guys have worked with Power BI and you may have experienced the similar kind of challenges, especially with the big data, right? Millions and billions of rows. You can't do that you just can't bring them in Power BI and do, right? So you need a different environment to do all the major transformations or heavy transformations, and then bring the transform data to Power BI this way. So Azure Databricks is kind of one of the area which you can really use, and yet, like, if you're really good with Spark or SQL, then you can really start doing that, because I think it's really good to have some kind of coding skill as an analyst, because it kind of makes your life easier, rather than asking data engineers or or your data science team to give you access to things, or generate those kind of outputs and transformations for you. It's always good you can try things on your own, and once you are good with it, then you can just go back to them and ask them to do the final thing. So that's why that's what I really wanted to share with you guys today. And the other thing is, please go back and sign up at Databricks Community Edition environment, because this is completely free, guys. I can paste a link here if you want, but this is kind of completely free, and you can just get your hands on with it without paying for Azure, because obviously using Azure Databricks needs a license, a pay-as-you-go license. But if you really are not comfortable for paying for it at this moment, but you can still start your journey with Spark and just go and sign up here. Then the other thing is, I've got some resources here which I can paste in the chat, like just few things I feel like you can really get started with, PySpark or Azure Databricks. Then you can follow these some of the resources. And I've also given links to Microsoft free dataset, because these datasets are really good. If you guys are into speaking, you can just go and take one of these data sets and start showing things or demoing things in your session using these data sets, because they are pretty good data sets. And the one and the other thing, the last thing is thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. And please, guys, go and give some feedback. I'll be pasting this link in the chat because it's really important. This is kind of a new session I've come up with. And I really want to understand if people really like the content I have delivered or if they would like me to deliver it in a different way. So yeah, please go and give this feedback. So yeah, thank you guys. That's what I really wanted to share with you. And yeah, let me know if there are any questions.
Thank you, Pragati. Wow. So a lot of the attendees are saying that, yeah, they're great to appreciate the more advanced session here. And they noticed a lot of the different languages you've been using. There are quite a few questions, actually, Pragati, in the chat here. So
Definitely.
one of the first questions is in relation to, okay, so we have a question by Lewis, who is asking, can notebooks be executed real time or at certain schedule to obtain updated data in Power BI?
Oh, so you mean real-time execution? Actually, sorry, it was Lewis, right? Lewis, I've
Yes.
actually not tried that before because how my process has been so far is like do all the basic kind of analysis and transformations in Azure Databricks. And once I feel like they are good to go, I just, you know, get them done. And but I have never felt a need for that real-time analysis. But yeah, I would definitely check that and get back to you guys because I've honestly not tried that if we can do that real time kind of thing for Power BI. Sorry about that, but yeah, I'll definitely check it.
Thank you, Pragati. So the next question is by Jitil John, who's asking, can we use ADF in Databricks?
Databricks and ADF. I think you can write back to ADF from Databricks. But I'm really not sure how you can. I mean, I am not sure what you really mean by ADF in Databricks, but I think you can write back to ADF from Databricks.
Thank you, Jitil. If you can provide any further clarification, that would be great. Nitin Jacob is asking, from what data sources can one extract data to Databricks?
Okay, so there are many actually. I mean, you can, like, for example, if you want to upload some files, like if you go to Azure Databricks, at the top, there's something like bring data from the file. So you can actually upload like CSV files you have gotten data from, or you can even bring Parquet files in Databricks as well. And you can also connect to different data sources, like, for example, Azure Data Warehouse. So yeah, there are kind of different sources there. And I think if you really need details, there is a good documentation on Microsoft's website as well regarding this, like what all data sources you can really use to connect to. I'm just pasting that link here if that helps. So maybe you can check that what all other available data sources are.
Thank you. There was actually a question from Sanchit who was asking, can you share the links and notebook, which I think you're
Yes.
doing.
Yeah,
Thank you for
I think
that.
let me just put that in a better way and share it rather than just pasting
Fantastic.
it. Yeah.
Awesome. So Madhu is asking, can Notebook be used as an ETL tool to refresh data daily?
I think this is similar to what Louis asked, right? Like you can do the real-time transformations and bring that in Power BI. I think that's what he's asking, right? I guess so.
Yes, Madhu, if you could provide further clarification, but yeah, let's just
Yeah, I guess
that'd
so
be great.
because this is
Yeah.
something I have not explored, guys. I mean the real-time transformations in Databricks and then bringing that into Power BI. But definitely, as you guys have asked, I would definitely go and research about it, like how that can be done, because yeah, it feels like a good way of getting things done. So definitely.
Well, Pragata, look, you've done a really great job there of really showcasing the art of the possible, and there's been some great questions and people thinking and getting ideas. So really appreciate that you've helped people spark to think outside the box when developing reporting solutions here. What I think there's a chance for one final question, which Nitin is asking here. Is the data modeling part still done in Power BI?
Yes, yes. So Azure Databricks is more like where you can do the transformations on your data, like adding column or, writing calculative columns and other things. But once that data is there, you do the data modeling in Power BI. But one way I can suggest, like, suppose if you're dealing with a very large data set, like what I did recently was like I did all the heavy lifting in Azure Databricks, did all the transformations there. And there were like 10 tables that were used in Azure Databricks. I wrote those output in Azure Databricks and bought them in Power BI, created my data model in Power BI, then published it as a data set in Power BI Cloud Service, and then used that data set for further reporting. So basically, you're doing data modeling still in Power BI.
Okay, Pragati, I promise this is the final question, okay? So the final
Definitely.
question by Satyam is asking, what is our main purpose of using Databricks? We can use Python script integrated with SQL.
So when you say using Python script, is it using Python script directly in Power BI? Because if you write Python scripts in Power BI, they are extremely slow. But connecting to Databricks and doing all your Python scripting or R scripting there, yeah. So if you're talking about writing Python scripts in Power BI, it is extremely bad from performance point of view. And especially when you're working with billions of rows of data, it will never work in Power BI. So that's why you need a intermediate layer before Power BI to do all these transformations. Now, it could be anything, not just Azure Databricks. It could be maybe use data flows in cloud environment, leverage the benefit of Power Query online, do all the transformations there, consume that data flow in Power BI to create your data model. But I would never suggest writing Python scripts in Power BI because it will, after a certain stage, it will definitely crash Power BI if your data is pretty huge. So that's why you need, these kind of environments which can handle this big data. Otherwise, you can't do them in Power BI, right? I hope that answers your question, Satyam.
Thank you so much again, Pragati. Lots of great feedback. Ibidapu is saying, many thanks, Pragati. Thank you for letting me know more about Azure Databricks. I always look forward to your sessions. Anil, I know you've dropped a question in there, but it'll be breaking a promise, and we are at the end of time. But I'm sure we'll be able to get that answered. But again, huge thanks, because I know Pragati is very busy. She's got more sessions to deliver. So huge thank you to Pragati. Pragati, please share your connection details in the chat, because we've got hundreds of people online, and I know you could really provide a lot of value to them all in their learning experience, being a leader in the core community.
Thank you so much, Raj. And yeah, thanks for this amazing audience. I mean, thank you for these questions, because this just helps me think out of the box, which I may just not be thinking while preparing the session. So thanks for coming up with these questions. I'll be better prepared with the answers soon, so I can, and yeah, I'll be definitely putting my social networking links here so you guys can connect with me. And if there are any questions that I haven't answered today because of the time challenge, then you can directly message me on LinkedIn. So yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Round of applause for Pragati. Thank you. Fantastic. Excellent. So there you go, guys. There was Pragati. Always fantastic sessions and learning from Pragati. So we are at the end of the hour now.